Hi there, this is a tutorial on how to transform data from a website into some pretty cool graphs that you can analyze and unpack and see what the actual data is kind of telling you. Sometimes when we look at this stuff, whoa, that's a big mouse. Sometimes when we look at this stuff, we can't tell what's actually happening because it's just a load of numbers to us. So graphs are a great way of just picking it apart really simply for us. Okay, so the first thing you're going to need to do is get onto this web page. So it's under Nuclear World and Global Economies. Unfortunately, it's a picture, so we can't highlight and copy and paste. You need to manually type it in, but that's fine. Work with someone else and they can read it out to you while you type in Excel. Second thing you're going to need is obviously Excel or Google Sheets. Excel seems to be a bit more straightforward, so I recommend using that, and it's a good tool to learn how to use it properly. So if I switch over to Excel, here's one I've prepared earlier. There's a couple of things in here. First, formatting wise, you'll notice that some of these words are cut off. In order for me to find them again, all I do is I pull my arrow up here and it turns into a double arrow with a line in between, and I double click and it automatically sizes that column to where I need it to be. The other thing is it's messy, so I want them to be in the middle, so I'm just going to center the text so I can read it easier. And the last thing is I've just put hydro here to save time. In actual fact, they're different hydro stations. So I'm going to change these to 500 watts. The next one down is pumped storage. And the next one down is greater than 20 watts. Cool. And again, it's cut it off, so I'm going to go back up here, double click, centers it, makes it all nice and fancy. There's my data. You don't need this one. The only reason I put that in is to compare and show you what we can find with graphs in terms of patternage. All you need to do is select 2 columns per graph. You can put more, but it's essentially 2 columns per graph to analyze. So let's say we wanted to learn about direct local jobs in each of these. I'm going to highlight all of these 2 columns here, including the heading. I'm going to go up to Insert. I'm going to click on my graphs up here. I'm going to choose column graph for this just because they're separated things. And I'm going to go clustered column. And so it spits out a nice little chart here for me. If it's too small, I can just enlarge to make it easier to see. I've got my heading up there already. I've got all my labels here. What I don't have is this side axis. So in order to put an axis label on that, click on my graph as a general thing, and then I come up here to format. No, I don't. I go to chart design, and I go chart elements. And I go axis titles. I want to do a primary vertical axis. Double click or triple click in there, should I say, till it highlights it all. And what is this? Well, this is the amount of jobs. So number of jobs. Cool. And there's my pretty little chart. It's wonderful, isn't it? So we can see clearly here that nuclear is dominating with the amount of jobs that it produces per factory. Now, we don't know why that is just yet, but that's one of the things we can see in this graph. We can also see that wind does not generate nearly any jobs. Same as micro hydro, solar photovoltaic. Can't even say that. Try and say it 3 times fast. They're not producing much. So that's one graph. Next, if we wanted to look at the comparison between this and the average salary, I highlight this by clicking and dragging. I move my mouse over here, so I've let go of the mouse now. And then I hold Command on the keyboard. I click and drag, and now I've selected 2 columns that are split apart from each other. And then I simply do the same thing I did before. I go Insert, I go Column Graph, and bam, another column graph. Wackadoo. So if I expand this one out, if I expand this out. Yay. Again, I've got no access title here, so I can click on here, go chart design, add chart element, axis titles, primary vertical, and this time what I've done is my average salaries in dollars per hour. Oops, per hour. Okay, so someone who's reading this can go, oh yeah, that's what these numbers are actually meaning. Click off there somewhere. Great. So what's interesting so far is already I can see that there's a difference between the amount of jobs that are created for each industry and the actual wage per hour that people are receiving. This one, pretty clear cut, and it falls the more you get towards here. This one, it's not as clear cut and it's very up and downish. So there's no real great pattern like we have over here where nuclear power is just dominating the rest. It's not the case over here for our average wages. So whilst the jobs are good, the actual wages are not as dominating compared to the rest of the other industries, which is interesting. Now, if I were to make a third final one, I might want to look at the output size, okay, versus the type. So again, I hold Command to select the next column, insert another graph here. Now I could put two of these together on the same one to compare them, but for now I'll just compare it like this. So this is the size of the power plant, how much energy it actually produces. So nuclear is not the most producing out of all of them. It's actually hydro produces the biggest one out of all these. So we're getting more jobs from nuclear without it producing as much, with a relative wage or salary out of it. But again, hydro produces a bigger wage. It has a lot less jobs involved, but it produces a lot more energy out of those ones there. So we can start to compare and make some sort of judgments about these things. Is it the best? Is nuclear the best option to be producing jobs? Yes, totally. It's dominating with the amount of jobs. Does that mean that everyone that works there is going to get an enormous salary and be richy rich? No. In fact, it's pretty average overall. The only one that doesn't give you a lot of money per hour is this solar photovoltaic. It's actually got the worst. So out of all these, the wages are fairly similar. Hopefully that helps you to unpack a few different ways of looking at graphs. You can also color code these if you like. You just click on the one you want and then go up to change colors. Actually, don't do that. Go to format and then go to fill shape, and you can highlight different ones doing that. So if you, for example, you wanted to highlight nuclear because it was just dominating, you could highlight that one. You could also highlight this as the main winner for the wages, and then down here you could highlight this one as the main winner for the output. But it's up to you what you do. You can just leave them all blue as well. As long as they've all got an axis title telling you what they are, it doesn't really matter. Alright, thanks for listening, and bye.